Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Prepared. Let's talk about illegal serving in the U.S. military. Now, people who didn't have citizenship, a path to citizenship as an incentive was offered to those who served honorably in uniform. It's really not new, but the ideas that were presented by Dick Durbin and Tammy Duckworth of Illinois were fairly new. So both of them said on a Senate floor Monday that we would address recruitment shortfalls by turning military service into a pathway to citizenship. Now, the issue with that is we have millions of illegal citizens that have poured across the border, and that has been a national security threat to our country. So the answer in fixing two major issues in this country, including recruitment and retention, as well as a onslaught of illegal human beings crossing the border through Mexico. I think in September, it was well over hundreds of thousands of illegals that crossed over, including Iranian, two of which were on the terrorist watch list. This has been a significant issue in national security. Why not knock out two birds with one stone and take those illegals who we don't know who they are and allow them to serve in the military on a pathway to citizenship? DC _Drano on his Twitter said, and there it is, Senator Dick Durbin is finally revealing their grand plan. Flood the country with illegal aliens, enlist them in the military, and make them citizens. The part he didn't disclose is who the Marxists will use the alien soldiers against. Now, the issue here that I'm seeing is obviously it's a national security issue. When you have retention and recruitment numbers down historically low since really the 1940s, we're running to an issue where we have to fill the gap. I don't think taking illegal aliens and converting them into American citizens and filling our ranks with people that we don't really know is a potential solution, but it's certainly not new. In my military career, I've served with several non-citizens that were earning their citizenship through different ways, different, I would say, MOS qualifications, military occupational specialties, but it wasn't on the front line. I mean, certainly you can't get a secret clearance if you're not a natural-born citizen or naturalized citizen. So immigrants have served the United States Armed Forces since the founding of our country, fighting in every major conflict in American history. That's not new. The estimates are approximately 700,000 foreign-born veterans, many of whom are now U.S. citizens, live in the U.S. today. We estimate there are about 45,000 immigrants actively serving. The most recent government estimates report that about 5,000 legal permanent residents enlist each year. More than 148,000 immigrants have served and earned citizenship throughout the military in the last 20 years, really since the global war on terror was declared. Over the last century, military service has provided a pathway to American citizenship for more than 760,000 immigrant service members. The big difference here is we're taking illegals that crossed illegally across our border and saying we're going to give them a pathway to citizenship. Now, I don't know the specific numbers, but imagine a large element of U.S. Armed Forces being those without totally understanding what their agendas were here in the first place. Yes, sure, some of them are seeking asylum, some of them are here for good reason, but man, that's pretty crazy as a course of action. Two Democrats from Illinois think otherwise. One, new policies made naturalizing increasingly harder for immigrant recruits based on policies to date. An example would be federal laws allow foreign-born individuals who serve on active duty or in reserve components to naturalize and secure U.S. citizenship after completing 1 year of honorable service during peacetime. Again, that's very different, taking a naturalized path than taking somebody who is here illegally, who is given a court date between 2 and 5 years and saying, hey, we're going to make you a legal citizen if you just serve in the U.S. military. In 2017, the Trump administration restricted this expedited citizenship process by implementing new mandatory wait times before the Department of Defense may issue the honorable service paperwork that immigrant service members must have in order to apply for citizenship. Remember, a lot of these positions that these naturalized paths are allowing for these people to serve aren't necessarily on the front lines of warfare. We're talking about admins, cooks, support positions. On August 25th of 2020, a federal judge ruled that the mandatory wait times are illegal, vacating the policy and ordering the Department of Defense to certify service within 30 days of a request. However, the damage had already been done because you had a lot of people who served honorably in this circumstance with a policy change and weren't allowed to the path to citizenship, which I don't agree with. Look, I come from a family of immigrants. My mom and her 6 sisters and her mother, my grandmother, all legally came here through the citizenship path, taking the test, waiting the periods of wait, and did so legally. We're not talking about that. We're talking about radical Democrats proposing, oh, are we hurting on retention, recruitment? Let's just take all the illegals because we're not doing the right thing policy-wise with our border and allow them to serve in the military and become citizens. That's what they want to do. I mean, why would they do that? I speculate one of the reasons you would do that is because if it was a Democratic policy and that path to citizenship was provided by the Democrats, then you would be loyal to that Democratic Party, which would allow all those people, obviously, the path to vote. I mean, they've already said that if you're working here paying taxes, then you should be able to be able to vote anyway. Ludicrous. Another thing is honorable service does not always guarantee approval for naturalization. Just because you serve as somebody who's in this country, not a born U.S. citizen, doesn't mean the path to citizenship is going to be service. But again, in this plan, there will be a guaranteed path to service. This is in the proposal phases, but I looked in the national media, the corporate media. You know who's covering this? 0 people, 0 national media outlets. Immigrants who enlisted to earn citizenship have lost status and faced deportation, which is true. According to news reports, some immigrants who hold critical language and medical skills were invited to enlist via the program that existed, not this legislation, but before. And the suspension of the military accessions vital to the national interest, MAVNI is the acronym. Go figure, the Army the military make an acronym. It's prevented thousands of immigrants from becoming citizens and has exposed many who had enlisted to the danger of losing their legal status and being subject to deportation. Let me just put this out here. There is a percentage of illegals who are crossing the border who have malice intent, who work for the cartels, who are here illegally, but also here for malice purposes, including foreign service organizations who are spying on our country and potentially counterterrorism threats that are here illegally on top of the fact they're trying to harm our country. 2 Iranians in September were discovered to be on the terrorist watch list. So what we're saying is if you come across the border, we don't know a lot about you. We're not just going to allow you to stay in the country for 2 to 5 years on a waiting list to show up for court and just throw you into the country, but we're also going to give you a path to sovereignty and set you up for success in potentially doing this country harm. Probably a bad idea. Citizenship is appropriate recognition of the contributions and sacrifices immigrants make in their service. Sure, immigrants contribute valuable skills and experience, but that is a legal process for people who are going through the timeline, the waits, because that's how the process works. I buy into that idea. If you're somebody from another country and you came through here through the legal processes and means, and then you're signing up for the military because you're here legally and your path to citizenship is that honorable service, I don't mind that. Yeah, but based on that, I don't think you should get a hall pass if you illegally cross into the country seeking asylum and just were dumped out into the country with that 2 to 5 year waiting list. I don't think this should be the expedited path to your citizenship when so many other people from so many other countries are sitting waiting in line. Lastly, Congress and the Biden administration should ease the pathway for service members to naturalize. According to this report, in order to continue reversing these trends, Congress and the Biden administration must ensure that the U.S. military is doing its utmost to encourage and support immigrant service members to naturalize, a naturalized path. This is not a naturalized path. What this is the cheat code, and Democrats trying to get favorable treatment for their own party by passing policy that's going to detrimentally impact our country's national security. I mean, when they said they wanted to do this, the presiding officer, my colleagues from I quote, the presiding officer, my colleagues from the state of Illinois has legislation which addresses one aspect of that. He said of Duckworth's proposal, her bill, and I describe it accurately, says that if you're an undocumented person in this country and you get past the physical and the required test, background test, the like, that you could serve in our military, and if you do it honorably, we will make you a citizen of the United States. Get the hell out of here. Get the hell out of here. With that being said, we did a soft prep course this weekend. And a lot of people who showed up were going into special operations in some capacity. And some of them had no desire to serve in any capacity. Some of them just wanted to improve themselves across the board as human beings, as men. One of the things that we identified from the board's perspective, the mentor's perspective, the instructor's perspective, is all these men that were coming to this course, the soft prep course, were looking for something in purpose. And I described it in my podcast on Mike Force with Kyle Thompson from Undaunted Life. If you ever heard that podcast, it's a great podcast. Our podcast as well. I'll plug our podcast, Mike Force podcast. But his podcast, The Undaunted Life, is good because it mentors men. And when I say that the country is dealing with a systemic issue, I mean it. But the systemic issue isn't drug overdose, suicide, violent crime, all the things. At the core, it's mental health. On his post, when he posted this on his social media, there were actually people who disagreed with me and said, well, mostly it's people who are doing drugs that have mental health issues because of the drugs. Look, I'm not going to get over the semantics of how one person gets into this or versus the next. But what I will say is, I don't think anybody would debate that if you're going to use drugs, if you're thinking about suicide, if you're conducting acts of violence, then you're likely not in the right state of mind in the first place. So you need to define or maybe even redefine your purpose. I mean, maybe you had purpose in the military as a law enforcement officer, as whatever you identified yourself with, but now you don't have defined purpose. You need to redefine it. I had my good friend Jeff Teagues on the podcast, which will be out this week. It actually will be out later in the week. And we talked about his book, Where Have All the Heroes Gone? Look, guys, we are in an existential crisis. And you could name all the things that you see in corporate media and even hear me talk about. But I think one of the most substantial issues is men's lack of purpose. And when I taught this soft prep, the special operations prep course this weekend, across the board, outside of the fact that many of these guys wanted to serve their country, they were looking for purpose. They were trying to find it in themselves. And we were telling them repeatedly, look, if you've planted the seed and you're thinking about it, commit to it and do the thing. I'll give you 3 major pro tips that I gave to my students during our board. We do a sergeant major board at the end of it, telling them what they did right, what they did wrong, and potentially things they could work on better. I'll give you the 3 pro tips I gave them that are tangible takeaways that you could add to your life. Number 1, read. Read a lot. There's a couple books out now that I recommend reading, but I'm always reading. On my phone, on my Audible account, I have 6 different books that I'm subscribed to now, depending on the road trip, the flight, the commute. I'm listening to those books depending on my mood. One of the books I recommend you pick up immediately is Where Have All the Heroes Gone? With Jeff Teagues, a pilgrimage through the Bible, the battlefield, and back home again. Jeff Teagues is a former special operations unit member, a special missions unit member in USASOC, also a commander, troop commander, former U.S. Army Ranger that jumped into Panama and retired a lieutenant colonel with honors. And he's somebody I highly respect and listen to. And this is a great book for getting that some of that advice. Another book I recommend getting that just came out is Choose Your Enemies Wisely by Patrick Bet David. I follow all his stuff. I follow his podcast. I follow his commentary and his social media. He just came out with a book. It's Business Planning for the Audacious Few, a great book from a man who gets it. Read. Have a book in your cargo pocket. Have a book by the toilet. Have a book everywhere you go, and constantly consume education and information from people that you respect. Also, I wrote a book called Prepared if you're interested. All right, secondly, stay away from booze, stay away from drugs, and stay away from chasing women. I mean, if you have a good woman in your life, a good partner in your life, maintain that, sustain that. But all of the things that I've seen destroy men's careers, people's careers, had to do with those three: drugs, women, and booze. You know, if you're drinking, you're likely not resting and taking the time to do the thing in optimizing your health and wellness, your performance, etc. And yeah, if you're a social drinker, you have a glass of wine at dinner with your family, you have a nightcap every once in a while, yeah, completely fine. I do that, in fact. But if you drink heavily and you can't control yourself, stop drinking. Every military career I've seen ruined typically was associated with drinking. There's a whole bunch of avocation for drinking, but do it the right way. Hell, I'm wearing a hat that represents a buddy of mine company called B-Hawk, Brad Halling, who was a Black Hawk Down operator in a special missions unit, and he has a whiskey distillery. That's the right way because he's teaching about the history, the taste, and it's spirits. It's social drinking, not advocating for a high consumption of alcohol. Drugs, mostly for dudes, I mean anabolic steroids. Guys are out there and they see the dudes that are fit and they think, oh, that dude's getting fit because he's drinking a protein shake. No, he's getting fit because he's abusing anabolic steroids. And it's sad. It's sad. I grew up with it in the military. I had a whole bunch of friends that were on it. And I saw it do everything from destroy their relationships, destroy their health and wellness, and also increase the likelihood of other follow-on issues like cancer. A lot of the guys that I saw abuse anabolic steroids over the course of their career, 10, 20 years, are dealing with the after effects. And I don't know if there's a tie between the two, but a lot of those dudes got cancer. And a lot of those guys suffered from cardiovascular disease and died super young. Lastly, women. Look, I don't mean if you have a relationship, sustaining that, maintaining that, do that. But I mean, messing around, chasing women. Again, it's about allocation of time and resources. If you're allocating your time and you're spending it wisely, you're going to lead to a successful path and career because you're pulling in and getting a return on investment. If you're wasting that time and those resources on things like women and booze, you're not specifically optimizing your potential. Lastly, the lifestyle. I put lifestyle as a blanketed term. What I mean is you got to live the lifestyle. I mean, if you're living a lifestyle of wanting to serve in special operations, you're likely living the lifestyle of kind of optimizing your overall well-being and performance, period. You're a high performer. You want to be successful. That's a special operations like mindset. That's a special operations mantra and part of the lifestyle. Like, here's an example. I didn't go to the gym every day to look buff in the mirror. I didn't do that for Instagram. So the lifestyle wasn't attributed to virtue signaling how I look aesthetically. It was at its root, at its core, a lifestyle to make sure I could carry my teammates out of harm's way or be fit to fight and not be a liability versus being an asset. So when I say that, it doesn't have to be a lifestyle of special operations. It could be a lifestyle of just being a high performer, being a constant student of life, always learning, always striving to be better, getting technical skill sets. It's why I like the lifestyle of preparedness, because if you're prepared, constantly you're trying to improve. Or you could be like one of those shit talkers on social media who just runs your mouth in comment sections, circling the drain, not really doing anything. It's funny how a lot of those guys are like not in the best shape and don't have their stuff together in their lives. I know some of them, they're alcoholics, they have relationship issues, they're not really healthy, they're fat. Those same people, you need to stay away from and associate yourself with the sum of five that are going to bring the healthiest culmination and collection of the best attributes that you look in yourself. Like, get the fittest dude that you know. Get the black belt professor to be your best friend in your circle of five, because he's going to make you better. And by benefit, it's going to be a reciprocating relationship. Get the guy who shoots, moves, and communicates well, because you might be able to teach him something, and he's certainly going to teach you something. Get the nerd who's into history and academia. That's the guy that you're going to lean on for making you intellectually more capable. That's the guys that you want to tether together. And that sum of five is certainly something that is going to help you live that lifestyle. You know, when I look at the sum of five, I got guys like Josh Smith, good friends of mine, who run a US-based company, Montana Knife Company, that focuses on American-made business. That's a hard business plan, guys. Like the soft goods that you're buying from me, because I'm Asian and I appreciate Asian culture, I'm sourcing in Vietnam, where 60,000 plus Americans perished, where we have substantial relationships still in Vietnam. And I don't have a problem with having our stuff manufactured in Vietnam. That's hard as it is pulling away from China, which is the easy button, but I don't appreciate China. And now you look at like trying to do that in America, that's really difficult. So I lean on friends like Josh to like talk about the moral efficacy of doing things made in America. It's why Pete from Origin's a friend of mine, where we want to know like, hey, how can we improve this? Oh, we're going to carry nothing but Origin shirts when we get up and running. We're going to do American made. Oh, our Origin jeans are coming out this spring. Those are touch points that I always look at when introducing friends into my network, right? I got a very close ring like Andy Stump, who's one of my best friends. Evan Heber is one of my best friends that are very close to me. And then I have friends like Josh, like Pete, like Jocko. This network and collaboration is what makes these kind of friendships very important in your life when you're trying to scale this lifestyle. Also, Josh Smith, I mean, did you see the Fieldcraft Survival Montana Knife Company knife? It's sold out in 2 minutes. And I hate it for consumers because it's like, I wish I had millions of those knives. But the reality is that's just what we're doing. I appreciate Josh's work ethic. I appreciate his business model. And it's not easy doing American made. Our next knife, I'll let you guys know when the next release is. But we sold out of a lot of knives in less than 2 minutes. And that's a good problem to have. They have knives right now in stock that you could find on montanaknifecompany.com. And if you use MF10, that's Mike Force 10, that's MF10, Mike Foxtrot 10, you can save 10% on checkout. Guys, we got a lot of things going on this week. We have Jeff Teagues on the Mike Force podcast. Make sure you're subscribed to that. And lastly, I want to talk about this focal point thing. Focal point is narrowing our focus. That's what focal point is. That's actually people are like, oh, that's a cool military term. It's actually a photography term because I'm a photography nerd, but it's kind of made its way into operations in the military. It's our focus. And our focus on the last episode was masculinity. The next focus is going to be politics, and that episode is going to drop this week on my channel on Mike Glover Actual. Make sure you always subscribe, hit the notification tab on that, but also subscribe to Focal Point on YouTube because starting in January, we're going to be dropping a lot of content with the synergy focused on these social issues with me, Andy, Chad Robichaux, Evan Hafer, the list goes on. Also, lastly, I want to say thank you to my patrons. Without your support, I wouldn't be able to have this channel. You guys have supported me since the very beginning. That's why I do the underground for you guys. It's post-show, things that I want to talk about that I can't necessarily talk about because we'll be suppressed. I don't know if you saw it. The last 2 episodes of Mike Force have been, the last 2 episodes of Mike Glover Actual have been suppressed because of the subject matter. I'm going to get a doctor in here soon. I want to throw a teaser out there because I'm going to have her on soon. Dr. Miriam Grossman. And just me saying that might get me suppressed, but she wrote a book on, it's called Trans Nation, exposing how messed up the transgender movement is targeting our kids. And I'm not afraid to talk about those issues. But the reason I'm not afraid to talk about those issues is because I'm not funded by corporate media. It's because of your support. So if you're a Patreon member, I appreciate you guys. And if you're not, check out the links down below. You can support our channel. And now I'm headed off to the underground. Till next time. Peace out, guys.